You're listening to the Eclectrocasts podcast. This is podcast number 34. California-based artist Valerie Polichar, recording under the name Huge Shark, stopped by Eclectrocasts for a chat about her EP from 2015 called Almost Over, as well as to give us a hint of what's to come in her new EP called Everything, due for release in late 2017.
Heard you screaming in that tender, the boy with the baritone heart. I kept faith with you through winter, and that was the end of the start.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for another installment of Eclectrocasts. This is Jeff, and I'm here with Kim, belly full of stars. Hi, Kim.
Hello.
And the great Sarah Schonert is here as well. Hi, Sarah.
Howdy.
So we are doing it without Case this time, and we are very, very happy to have Valerie Polichar here, who you guys may know as Huge Shark. And she is with us for our hour today. Hello, Valerie. How are you?
I'm great. It's wonderful to be here.
Good, good. Thanks for taking time on a Sunday, to speak with us on Eclectrocasts. You have been on our list for a while, so we're happy to finally track you down. So that's excellent. Valerie, I would like to start with just an informative question for you. Where can listeners find your music if they want to stream it or download it and purchase?
I've done my best to make it available everywhere. So my primary source would be Bandcamp. You can also find music on SoundCloud. You can find me on Spotify. You can find me on iTunes. You can find me at CD Baby. You can find me at hugeshark.org.
HugeShark.org. So it's Huge Shark that people look for it on any of those platforms if they want to find the music, not Valerie Polichar.
Yeah, spelling my last name is a little challenging, and so Huge Shark is a lot easier to find.
So we have to ask, how did you come to choose the name Huge Shark? We all know what a huge shark is, but what is its significance?
I have a story for you. So my husband is Australian, and we spend about a month in Australia every other year. And so about 20 years ago, maybe a little bit more, my first visit, we're driving around in downtown Perth, and we go by a sign, and the sign says, "Tonight, huge shark at the jetty." And I looked at my husband and I said, "Rob, how did they know?" And he looked at me like I, was born yesterday. And he said, "It's a band. The jetty is a pub." I went, "Oh, I'm going to steal that band name."
And you did.
And I did. And I looked around the internet first. I tried to make sure that nobody was actively recording under that name, that nobody in Perth was looking like they had gigs under that name. So I think it must have been a fairly short-lived band. But yeah, I stole it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, excellent. So it has no significance other than it sounded like a cool name.
It's an awesome band name.
It sounded like a cool name, and you remember that associates a memory with you, actually.
Yeah, I do like sharks. I mean, not a huge shark fan, but I like sharks. Yeah. I like to snorkel with the small leopard sharks that come into La Jolla Cove in the summertime.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool, yeah. I like Shark Week on Animal Planet. I think that's the closest I get to
and
that.
also kind of evokes a certain attitude, which I quite like to associate with it when I think of it.
Yeah, I think I also found it funny. I find it funny, the contrast between my particular voice and the aggressiveness of a huge shark. I think those are perhaps not quite in sync, and I think that's funny.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would like to see a shark singing with your voice personally.
I should get an animator. I think I could do that.
Oh, yes. For your next video. That'll be great.
I work with some animators, so I
potentially
could.
I'm thinking of the Chicken of the Sea tuna fish commercials or whatever it is.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Charlie.
Remember that? Charlie? Yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
See, Sarah, you gave everybody an idea, and it had nothing to do with penguins, so that's awesome.
I think Sarah
you could
needs
use
to
a
paint
puppet,
it.
though.
Oh, that's right.
I could paint you a shark.
That would be very funny.
Now, we all have questions for you, and we all want to talk about your music, and we want you to talk about your music in, whichever way you want. One of the things I'm curious about is what led you to record an EP's worth of tracks for Almost Over last year. Actually came out in the end of 2015, and not a full EP, because I think you're very prolific as we've discussed in the past. You write a lot.
I do. I've written almost 400 songs. Started writing songs when I was 13 or 14. So it's been a lot. There's a huge amount in my catalog, but I am slow. I've only recently learned to work with recording software. I've been learning about arrangements. I think I've made a lot of progress in the last few years, but it's definitely a process. And so it takes me a long time to record songs. And there's another component, which is my health. I'm not able to sing quite a lot of the time because of health problems, and that's been true since my 20s. Mm-hmm. And so I have to wait for those windows when I am able to sing, I am well enough to do the recording. And so it took a long time. I began to, after releasing a few little singles here and there, I began to get some pressure from the fans I managed to collect on Twitter to create an EP. And first I thought I did need to wait until I had enough songs for an LP, and I thought that would be several years. And they persuaded me that it would be great to go ahead with an EP, that I think EPs are maybe even a little bit more popular now, that perhaps people's shorter attention spans, especially when you're new, right? They're going to take a chance on 4 or 5 songs. They might not take a chance on 10. So that's what I did.
Yeah, that is true.
That's interesting. That's something that online and in Twitter conversations that I know Jeff and I and some others, I think even Sarah was in the conversation, talked about how do you create a collection? Like, do you decide whether you're going to do an LP or an EP on technical kind of questions, like do you have enough songs gathered? Do you do it thematically? Is it better even if you have a bunch of songs? Because as you had mentioned, you have over 400 songs, which is amazing. Deciding and choosing which ones to record or not record and how they kind of fit together. How do you make those decisions?
So it's a big process. First, I do spend all the time. I spend time combing through my catalog and putting together fantasy albums. I want to do an LP with these 12 songs. And they're typically either around a theme or maybe just around what my emotions are at the moment, which songs are calling to me from the past. So there was a theme to Almost Over. It kind of shaped up as focused on impossible desires of various sorts. But then I had maybe it narrowed down to about 12 or 15 song potential to record. Wrote them all out on index cards, kind of laid them out, imagined different orders. I wanted the songs to vary in intensity and speed, and I wanted to tell a bit of a story emotionally. Even though the songs are all about different situations, I wanted the listener to be carried through a story. And so I eventually got it down to the 6, actually it's 5 plus a remix that went on the album. I'm a little bit limited by my current arrangement skills, so my ability to get the sound that's in my head into a recording. That has constrained my choice of songs a little bit, at least on the first album. I think it's my skills are growing. I feel a little less constrained on the upcoming album.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I hear an energy in the new track that you sent us, Lost Your Love, that it's not that it was missing on the Almost Over tracks, but it sounds a little bit more pronounced. Maybe it was intentional, perhaps.
That might be true. It's a relatively new song. I wrote it last December, January.
Yeah.
So it's about a year old. When I normally record, you will hear songs that I wrote 10, 20, 30 years ago interleaved with songs I've written recently. There is a difference. I'm definitely, I don't know that I would say that I have grown as a songwriter exactly, but I definitely think I have changed over the years just from my experiences, my age, what I'm looking at in my life.
Now, do you feel like that's musically or lyrically or a combination of the two that you've made that progression, or?
That's interesting. I think of it as a musical change more than anything else. I think lyrically I am more consistent, and emotionally I visit themes over and over again. But musically, I think I'm listening to different things. I have had more experiences to feed into that.
Okay. Yeah, well, definitely especially on the musical growth, I've been wondering how you come up with your melodies.
So I'm going to answer that question, but I'm also going to tell you how I come up with the words, because it is a simultaneous process.
Oh, I totally get that.
So I definitely have a process that recurs. Usually the initial verse and the melody come together. They just pop into my head, very often in the car. So I will sing through that initial 2 to 4 lines, and I'll just sing through it over and over again. It might change a little bit, and then suddenly the chorus will come. And that usually also comes kind of fully fledged with both a melody and lyrics. So I have those 2 bits, and I will work over them in the car until I feel like I really know them.
Do you have a voice recorder to capture that stuff, Valerie?
I purchased one recently, but I haven't started using it. I'm not in the habit yet. This is just, I've done this for so many years that I just count on repetition to keep the music in my head. So when I get home and I get some private time at the keyboard, I work out the chords. I often will add on, so I'll have the first 2 to 4 lines of a verse, but sometimes there will be a bridging line, musical line that I will add at that point. And then I'll go away from the keyboard and I'll write the rest of the words. And very often, I don't know why this happens, but very often the initial verse becomes the second verse. So it's kind of strange, but it's that also recurs. And I'll come back and test it and make some little tweaks, because sometimes you sing something and the words just don't sound very good, or new words come. And then I get to the bridge, and writing a bridge is actual real hard work for me. I will sit down at the keyboard. I will try different things. I'm looking to create some contrast with the melodies of the verse and the chorus. I'm also looking for a turn in the lyrics. If it's a very personal song and it's about something that I'm going through right at that moment, it may take me a few weeks to get the bridge, because there may need to be some resolution or some shift in whatever the situation is. So I have tried writing lyrics first and then creating a song around them. That I always want to do that. It never works. The result is always just subpar. I don't know why that is. The lyrics always come across very heavy-handed. The music is never innovative. So it's a temptation, but I just try to avoid it.
It might. I'm wondering if it's maybe that you're at the point that if you've already pre-written the lyrics, the words are the focus, so you don't feel like you can kind of change them or mold them as much if you're trying to, so you're kind of almost trying to force a melody more than you are trying to let it all come naturally when it all comes at the same time, maybe?
Right.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
It sounds like as it should, your process serves what hits you emotionally, because that's what sparked the germ of the idea, it seems.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was wondering if that was the same thing for the fact that when you write, that the first verse that you write ends up becoming your second verse, because oftentimes in lyrical song progressions, you have the start and the germ of an idea, but then when you get to the second verse, that's when the idea really kind of becomes fully fledged. The emotion really kind of comes through a little bit more. So that was the emotional spark that hit you initially. And so that's really kind of the heart of the song, the first thing that you came up with. But that becomes the build once you kind of get the song structure in. I wonder if that's kind of how maybe part of the reason why it becomes the second verse instead of the first verse.
Yeah, I think you've called it. I think you can't always leap right into that heart of emotion. You have to, especially to tell a story, you have to build up to it. You have to give the listener some clues first of how you got there.
Yeah.
And I do this, even though I don't work lyrically, I do the same thing with, compositionally with my pieces too.
Yep.
Kim will attest to that.
Yes, I do
takes
too.
me 5 minutes to get to the main melody sometimes. And Valerie, you know that too. But yeah.
Yay, ambient
I have to
music.
tell you that I got to tell you this the washing machine theory of music that my friend Tamsin came up with, and she uses this for house music. But she says, you've got your fill cycle, and then you've got your spin cycle, and then the agitation, and then rinse, sort of quiets down, and then finally you have a spin out to finish. And I do think that now when I'm writing music. I cannot get away from it. That, now, I'm in the fill cycle, so we're going to build up.
It's a good analogy.
That's a great analogy. I love that. Sarah, do you like that one? Because you do a lot of, yeah?
I do enjoy that, but I hate laundry.
Well, I asked you specifically because of Laundry Day. So, yeah.
It's too bad Case isn't here since he's got the laundry tapes.
Oh, yeah.
That he did too, yeah.
Yeah, he's washed up somewhere. So.
Yeah. But no.
So, Valerie, how did you start? Well, actually, this is a two-part question. You can take it down whichever road you'd like. I'm kind of interested in what your first musical memories are. What did you grow up listening to music in your house? Were your parents musical, etc.? And what kind of inspired you to start playing piano, keyboards, or any other instruments and singing? And, kind of a little bit of a history of your musical life up till now.
Sure. I do come from a very musical family. My father plays viola. He really plays all stringed instruments. He played, if I remember correctly, in the Ann Arbor Symphony when I was growing up. My brother's a composer. He plays trumpets and keyboards. My sister plays French horn. My aunts and uncles all play violins and oboe. And so there was music always around me. I can remember swinging on a swing set when I was 5 or 6 years old, making up a song to sing as I was swinging on the swing set. So I think I started early. I was listening mostly to folk as a kid. So my parents had Peter, Paul and Mary, Judy Collins, the Serendipity Singers. That was my exposure. And so I did kind of start in that world. And I wanted to sing like Judy Collins. She still has just this amazing bell of a voice. When I was, I guess, 13 or 14, I wrote my first song, and it was in response to an English class assignment. She said we could turn in our homework, which was a book review, in any format we wanted. And so, people were making pictures, and I decided to try to write a song. And the book was Peter Beagle's A Fine and Private Place. And I think I wrote 3 songs about that book, turned it in. And unfortunately, overnight, a bunch of kids in the class who were kind of scoundrels took the cassette that I had recorded the songs on and destroyed it.
Oh, no.
Oh,
and
man.
I couldn't remember the songs. So at that point in time, I wasn't good at remembering my songs. I've had to become very good at it because I don't keep very good notes. But at the time, I just lost them. So the first 3 songs I ever wrote are gone. But I was hooked at that point.
Now, did you start out with any traditional music lessons? You have your family, that was involved in classical music. Did you take piano lessons or voice lessons,
Yes.
obviously?
No, I didn't have voice lessons.
Oh, really?
I had piano lessons. Had piano lessons from ages 6 to 16. Mm-hmm. My parents really wanted me to become. They really thought that I was going to become a concert pianist, and I don't think I had the skill. I certainly did not have the dedication, but I also didn't know that they had this dream for me. So I was very badly behaved in piano lessons. My trick was I would sit on the piano stool to start, and then I would slide off the stool. And my hands would go up, and so I would be kind of lying on the floor playing my piece. And
that's almost Glenn Gould.
Yeah.
You can imagine this did not go over very well. I had very long-suffering teachers. But needless to say, I did not become a concert pianist.
So how did you get into more of the pop sound then? Because you definitely have some almost a dream pop, a little bit dance music. So you started listening to a lot of folk. How did that morph?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think about that. I had a folk gig at a club in San Diego in the 80s for quite a long time, playing guitar, which I don't do very well. I was in a blues band for several years in graduate school. I think, to be honest with you, some of the reason I moved into this genre was the influence of using GarageBand and the particular sounds that were available in there. Mm-hmm. And as I was learning to write kind of in a digital format, I leaned more and more towards that sound. But as I look back, my early maybe 250, 300 songs are very heavily singer-songwriter stylings. You know, you would think, oh, Sarah McLachlan style of music, Lorena McKennitt, maybe. Mm-hmm. So the trend towards electronic is much more recent for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why don't we hear one of your songs from your EP from 2000? Came out in December 2015, right?
Correct.
Is that right? Almost Over came out. Yeah, I remember that. Let's hear the lead-off track from Almost Over. This is called The Line of Life here on Eclectrocasts.
So continuing on that, so GarageBand was an influence, and Line of Life, you know, the song that we just listened to, being more beat-oriented, more dance-oriented. To me, there's a little bit of disco feel kind of attached to it, too. So since you obviously do have that kind of musical sensibility in your ear already, you now have the tools to work with it. Do you have some bands or influences? Like I hear Alison Moyet when I hear your voice, especially in the lower registers, and kind of associate it with a progression of maybe her style, you know, that from the early 80s and early 90s, you know, coming into today. And I kind of hear that influence in there. Was she an influence, and are there some other bands in that genre that you listen to as well?
Definitely. You know, as a young teen, I listened to some disco. Bee Gees were big then. Electric Light Orchestra. Electric Light Orchestra was sort of a revelation for me at the time. The idea that you could have this very orchestral music and yet it was rock and roll. And then I did a lot of dancing in gay clubs in the late 80s. So definitely a lot of dance music was going into my ears. Kate Bush was an influence, although I was already making music that sounded a little bit Bushian, and somebody said, you know, somewhere around 1983, they said, you know, you really should listen to Kate Bush. You sound a little bit like her. And so, but I think, you know, listening to her through the years, I picked up from her and also from Jane Siberry the idea that you could really layer sound, and you could put many tracks together to create the sound you were looking for. Alison Moyet, Yazoo for sure. The Eurythmics and Annie Lennox. I mean, they both. I have said that the only people I would trade voices with would be either Annie Lennox or Alison Moyet. I mean, they have just the best voices. But I think I would have to add Bat for Lashes to that now. She maybe has won my heart vocally.
I've only heard a couple of those tracks by Bat for Lashes. Yeah,
she's
not very familiar with them. Yeah,
she's also very heavily influenced by Kate Bush. Yeah. The biggest revelation for me was Operatica, and you may not know the band, but if you've watched the movie The Fifth Element, the opera singer that kind of has dance beat behind her that comes out and sings. That's one of the tracks from Operatica's first album. They have two albums. Okay. And what Lord Vanger, the producer, has done is gotten actual opera singers, trained opera singers, to sing on his tracks, and then added these dance beats to them. And it's fantastic. And it let me know that someone with my particular texture of voice, because you don't choose your voice. I don't think I would have chosen to have a voice that leaned in the operatic direction, given that I love pop so much. But that's what I got, and it gave me the sense that I could make the kind of music that I would like with my voice.
Well, one of the things that really strikes me about your writing and about the way that your songs work with your voice is that your lyric writing, your arrangement writing, especially on piano, all of it's very emotional. It's very personal. And I think the way that you express with your voice works so well with that. I mean, it works so well to express the meanings of the songs, the meanings of the lyrics as you go along. So whether or not it would be your voice if you had to pick out of millions or not, I think it works beautifully with your music.
No, so how do you take care of your voice? How do you prepare when you're feeling ready to sing?
So
how do you prepare?
I have to have had enough sleep for a few nights in a row, and I do vocal warm-ups. I don't have a very interesting routine. I just do some basic vocal warm-ups. Got my glass of water. I'm not one of those singers that has to eat a quart of ice cream or something. In fact, I try not to.
How do you warm up, Sarah? Just by contrast.
Yeah. Well, actually, for me, I like to have a little bit of honey. I also do vocal warm-ups. I'll usually run through a bunch of songs myself first, but I have to avoid soda and dairy myself before I sing. It gums it right up.
Agree with that. Yeah, when I used to have a regular gig at the folk clubs, the gig would start at 7 because I was the standard intro act to a lot of maybe better known folk singers, Sam Hinton, folks like that. And so I wouldn't eat dinner because there'd be no way I could sing before, if I'd eaten.
No, that's very true. Every singer has their own stay away foods and their own comfort foods. And when I say foods, I mean medicinal medicinal whatever treatment for their voice, either to to stay away or for or to have that. I'm interested, Valerie, in what does do you run your songs or song ideas by your husband before or during, or is he does he welcome that sort of his point of view? Is he musical too, and is that a hindrance or a help, or anything like that?
So Rob is very supportive of my music. He's not a huge fan. He said he liked the album. He does listen to it sometimes. I can hear him in his office listening to it. But he typically does not hear things that I've just recorded or ask me about my music. And that's kind of okay with me. I think my music is so deeply personal that I'm not sure I would want to have to explain it, especially right after I wrote it. There's a certain kind of privacy of inner emotion that I think what I've said about my music is that it serves as a diary for me, but not a diary that someone else could read and understand. So it's coded. So if you read through it and you thought you want to take it literally, you would think, oh, she's having all these relationships, and that's not actually the case. You might also interpret a song as being a love song, and perhaps the germ of the feeling that set that off was even just a relationship with a coworker, not a romantic attachment. I take kind of germs of emotion and reactions to things, and I augment them a lot with poetic license. But for me, it serves as a record of the feelings I've had over the years, so I can look back through my music and understand where I have been emotionally. I wouldn't want to translate that for somebody. I expect that my listeners will interpret the music in a way that fits their experiences and their emotions. And so I'm not eager to get emotional feedback, if that makes sense, on the thing I have just composed.
Right. That makes sense.
One of the lines that that is in your new song is the boy with the baritone heart.
Yeah.
I love that line too. And I'm not going to ask you what it means because I have my own interpretation. I don't want it shattered. But but no,
one poet to another.
I only say that because I think that fits in very well with what you just said and how you describe what your words are and what they mean to you and how you don't want to reveal necessarily where they came from because it's not important in a way.
Right. I can say a couple things about that song though, because that particular song has some interesting influences. So yes, that there's potentially some meaning behind that song that I'm not going to go into. But at the time that I was writing it, there were a few things going on, and one of the things was that one of my closest friends was dying, and she died about a month and a half after that I finished writing that song, and that loss, along with some things that were going on at the time and some emotions from the past, they kind of folded together into the mood that I was in when I wrote that. And then I tweeted 3 tweets in January of 2016, and I claimed that I was going to write a song about them, and then I had to do it. So that happened too. So I'll read you the tweets. First one was, funny things trigger memories, ideas. Tripping over, literally, a wedding present CD in the garage. An old faded file box full of letters. And then torn corner of a photograph that I can recognize just from the gloss, the white border, the darkness. And then it's all going in the song, along with the cool, clear night and all the things I'm going to lose and all the things I can't lose because I never had. So then those served as key points when I was writing the song. I thought, oh, better get that wedding present CD into the song. Better get the...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I love that line.
Yeah. So what else do you want? What else can you? Because we're going to listen to "Lose Your Love" in just a minute, which is from your upcoming EP, which should be out later this year. You expect? Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to share about "Lose Your Love" in particular?
I'm moving in a slightly different direction vocally on this song. I had some feedback after I released "Almost Over" that people were hoping for a little bit less vibrato, and because I did not have formal voice training, it took me a while to figure out how to do that, how to reduce the vibrato, which is not under good control. But on some of the new songs on the new album, I'm looking to explore more range in my voice. Also, the artist Hilliot Fields, he kind of challenged me to sing in a lower register. And you don't hear the lower register a lot on Lose Your Love. It's there a little bit, but you'll hear it more on the title track, Everything, and probably on some of the other tracks on the album.
Yeah, the EP is to be called Everything.
That's right.
Correct? Yeah, yeah. So somebody actually remarked about your vibrato and wanted you to use less.
Yeah, I heard it.
Nerve.
I heard it mostly from my from my uncle, who is my uncle's been in the music business for a long time, and I could, and my husband also has mentioned it from time to time. The problem with vibrato, if it's not well controlled, is it starts to sound like a tremolo. It sort of sounds like something. It sounds out of control, and what you want to do with vibrato is use it judiciously.
If it helps at all, I had the same feedback when I started out too. To reduce the vibrato just a little bit. And I happen to be a real big fan of vibrato. So, you know what, you can bring it all you want. I will still listen.
You see, I know, and even though it's there, Valerie, I mean, sometimes when you really go into full vibrato mode, it seems to work well with the drama that's going on in the song. Like the end of Indelible, for instance, is particularly, you know, that those phrases over and over again at the end of Indelible, which we'll hear later on. You know, but I think you do actually have a good mix of when to turn it on and when to even it out a little bit. Yeah.
Well, it's definitely something that I want to use on purpose rather than inadvertently. And I do also feel, so I've written songs in many genres. I've written a lot of blues songs. You'll hear a little bit more range on this album coming up, and I think that also will let you hear my voice in slightly different forms.
Good, good. So why don't we listen to Everything? Everybody, thank you for being here with us. We are talking with Valerie Polichar. You'll know Valerie as Huge Shark, and Huge Shark has an EP coming up, hopefully be done by the end of this year. It's going to be called Everything, and this is one of those tracks. You won't hear it anywhere else but on Eclectrocasts right now. This is called Lose Your Love.
Heard you screaming in that tender, the boy with the baritone heart. I kept faith with you through winter, and that was the end of the start. I lights. While the rivers flood the byways to the only thing that shines. I can't lose your love. I can't lose your love. I can't lose your love. It never was mine. I can't lose your love. I can't lose your love. I can't lose your love. It never was mine. I've got you for all time. I've got you for all time. The boy with the baritone heart. The boy with the baritone heart.
So Valerie and I, since we were talking about her production on Almost Over, and she's done some wonderful horn arrangements on there, but and we were just talking back and forth about production ideas, but I had to start an email with, okay, I've got to let you know this first. I can't stand MIDI horns. That being said, and then we were able to go ahead and talk about the arrangements and everything, because what she did with them was wonderful, and we talked about articulating them in a different way and this and that. But I have to tell you, from my early days of making music, where I was doing all my sequencing inside a Yamaha SY55 synth, I was doing some arrangements for some church groups, and the only horns that I had were the horns inside my Yamaha. And at one point I had to actually do a sax solo imitation using my pitch bend on my Yamaha. And those days have scarred me. So no matter how good the synth reproduced horns are, I just have this thing about them. So I had to tell her, I was like, I do want to talk to you about this because I think you've done a great job. But let me just say this.
So I have bad news for you.
So therefore I asked her. So therefore I asked her, okay, any MIDI horns on this one?
You're definitely going to hear more MIDI horns on the new album. And the solace I can offer you is that I do have a larger collection of horns now. I've got some better sounds, but there's still, none of them sound real. I kind of fell in love with arranging horns on that one track. Mm-hmm. And so I've used it more on the new album. So you're going to hear horns on the track Everything when that comes out. The two things that I've really kind of fallen for lately is the idea of mixing nature sounds with music, with electronic music.
Oh, I like
and
that.
Also supposedly acoustic instruments with electronic music. Mm-hmm. Now, I could find some horn players. Here's the problem. I tend to write songs in very odd keys that do not fit most horns. Mm-hmm. And so it makes it very challenging. Now, again, you can record it and you can transpose that. It doesn't always sound very good. Mm-hmm. Transposing a recording of a real instrument can often sound nearly as bad and tinny as the MIDI horns. So I'm sorry, you'll have to grit your teeth because I really have there are just moments where I love the sound of an unusual horn solo coming through. So
Yeah. Well,
there is more to come.
well, and now I'm prepared. Well, you have to use the tools that you have, and that's just my leftover scar tissue from doing the exact same thing many years ago. And I have a confession to make, is that I recently, in the last year, acquired a Yamaha DX7 Mark II. And one of my favorite sounds on there is the horn sound. There's like a French horn that's just kind of the MIDI horn sound. And I've been playing with it all the time. I don't do horn arrangements with it. I do other things. I add delays onto it and this and that. But I'm being a little bit of a hypocrite in that I always go to that horn patch on the DX7 now to play around with. So you can cast stones in this direction if you want.
I think that's fair.
So you were talking about how your husband doesn't necessarily ask a whole lot. Do your coworkers ask you a lot about music? And more importantly, do you get a lot of requests for, can you please write a song about X?
Can I just interrupt? I think this is so funny because Sarah and I go back and forth complaining sometimes about our coworkers and their expectations on our music. So I want to hear a third voice about this.
Well, not everyone knows
Yeah.
that I have this secret musical life. I actually keep them a little bit separate. I'm also a published writer, and I also edit a literary magazine. And typically, I have told coworkers about maybe one of those three things, and perhaps not all of them. So I don't get too many comments on my music, although I have had an embarrassing situation where I was having my first one-on-one with a new employee, and the door of my office opened and someone came in with some money and said, "Can I buy your CD?" That was all awkward. Like, yeah, I'm not doing this on university time.
Right.
But I have had people say occasionally, "Could you write a song about X or Y?" And I have done that. One of the more amusing sides of that is that my brother and sister and I used to sit down around the piano together, and we would try to, together, on the spur of the moment, make up a song about some nonsense. So I would just start to play, and they would throw in lines, or one of them would say, "Okay, now throw in an elephant," and I would sing another line about an elephant. And that ability to write spontaneously was very helpful for me when I was in the blues band. I would be on stage, and I'd finish singing the song. The band decided they weren't done, right? They would keep going. And so they would look to
people
me
do
like,
that.
"Could
Vamp
just
it.
sing some more," right? And I would make up lyrics on the fly. And I was very good at it. I could make them rhyme, everything. The only problem was they were really dirty. They were the raunchiest lyrics. And so I would be singing these lyrics with this horrified expression on my face because this stuff was coming out of my mouth. And I was thinking, oh, my goodness. Fortunately, I know my parents weren't in the audience in those days.
Well, and
Yeah,
it's a
that's
blues club,
funny.
so the audience was right for it, probably, hopefully.
Yeah, you got to wonder what's in one's subconscious sometimes.
Yeah, really. Valerie, the track Indelible is one of two ballads on your Almost Over EP. And it comes as a nice contrast, kind of sandwiched in between the line of Life and Stone on your EP. What can you tell us about Indelible? What would we, if you were to describe, this is kind of awkward because as musicians, we like people to listen before we have to explain if we explain at all. But if you were to summarize Indelible for somebody who hadn't listened to it and you wanted to tell them what it was in like a sentence, what would you creatively perhaps say about that song?
So this song is exploring what happens when you first have feelings about a particular person. And when I say feelings, like that could be a crush, it could be falling in love, it could be loss or grief. You've just lost somebody. And you are trying to understand whether or not these feelings are permanent changes in you that you're not going to really recover from. You're going to be a different person afterwards, or whether you're just going to get over it and move on. Yeah,
you use a lot of allusions with an A, to permanence in the lyrics, you know, burned into and carved into bone and tattoo, things like that. And, you know, I kind of wonder, as the speaker of the song, you know, is saying that she or he feels that these things are part of them. What sort of impact do we have on somebody else? I wonder, you know? I mean, I'm just kind of thinking out loud, you know? Is it a two-way street? And in your case, is it a two-way street? Or are you, because sometimes I think a lot of what makes something more lasting, especially if it's hurtful, is knowing that something that meant so much to you didn't really seem to be burned into somebody
Right.
else.
So that wasn't so relevant to this particular song, but it's true that I sing a lot about loss. And I've probably experienced a reasonable amount of loss. I've had a lot of friends die and lovers die, and but there's also loss in things like unrequited love. There's loss in these kind of ships that pass in the night kind of situations where you meet someone and, you know, maybe you're with somebody or they're with somebody. It's not the right time. You kind of slide past each other, but you think, oh, that might have happened, right? Either you might have been lovers or you might have been friends, but it doesn't quite happen. And I think all those things are different flavors of loss, and I do think about those quite a bit.
I'd like to say it's a little too soon to know you've got my heart for good. I can see down the road ahead and it ends in dust, just like every dreamer would. Are you a tattoo written on my skin? Are you only chains around the heart within? Are you a tattoo? If I were real, would you ever look twice behind? Would you see me standing on the stair? If we could dance on the precipice, face to face, would you vanish in midair? Are you a tattoo carved into my bone? Are you only change, the turning of a stone? Are you a tattoo? I'll carry to the end. Or are you just the blood I've lost, the breath I have to spend? Are you a tattoo?
So, tell us a little bit. We're going to talk a little tech now, if that's okay. I know that Sarah and I were wondering about, what kind of equipment you use to record. I'm curious about what kind of synthesizers or soft synths, whether they're virtual synths or not, or, give us a rundown of your equipment and what you use and what you like about it, etc.
So I'm going to have terrible answers to this, and it's embarrassing because I'm actually in IT. So I've been working in IT for the last 35 years, and you would think
don't let Kim's degree in audio engineering throw you either.
It totally throws me. But and honestly, a lot of what I was able to do on Almost Over was thanks to help from Kim, who really helped me kind of explore a little more what I could do with the equipment I had.
Good.
Good. I do use GarageBand. I'm sort of thinking that it's time to graduate to Logic Pro. And I've been only using the synth sounds in GarageBand, although I'm trying to get my old Akai synthesizer from the 80s fixed because there's some built-in sounds in there they're definitely very 80s, but they're unique and I would love to use them. And so I think that the original sound kit that came with GarageBand was a bit limiting to me. I've augmented that recently, so you'll hear more sounds. I have a larger palette on the next album. I don't use a lot of effects. I have Melda's compressor, and I mostly use Apple's Matrix Reverb, and haven't really explored too much with effects. And again, I think that's something that Logic Pro will make a little bit more easy for me. I do have a tube mic that I use for recording my voice that I absolutely love. So that I really do hear the difference with a tube mic too.
Yeah, definitely a nice warmer presence. Which tube mic
Yes.
is it?
Yes, asking for a friend, right?
Spill.
Oh.
Spill.
Exactly. It's so embarrassing. I would have to go downstairs. I can't remember.
Okay, tell us later.
Yes, message us with which mic you're using.
Yeah, because it sounds great. I mean, and having a unique voice, sometimes it's hard to get the right tech, the right mic to capture it. And I think your voice comes across really well in your recording. So obviously the tube mic is doing a good job for you.
I think also, I wouldn't say exactly that I'm a perfectionist because I never feel like things are perfect and I put them out anyway. But I'm always searching for the sound in my head. And there will be some tweets recently where I was trying desperately to find a bass patch for one of my songs. And in fact, that was Lose Your Love. And I wanted kind of I could describe it as an elastic band sound. I could hear it in my head. It was kind of this funky bass. And I listened to 60 or 70 different bass patches, both within the GarageBand ones I downloaded and then other ones I found. And I finally realized that I had to take a sound and then apply various effects to it to finally get the sound I was looking for. And I can be very stubborn if I really want a particular sound. And I will not finish the piece until I have found the sound I want. So.
It's a very sawtoothy sound, right? That very that bass sound to Lose Your Love, if I'm thinking of it.
Oh no, it's not the lower bass. It's the one I'm using for some little motifs here and there throughout the song.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah,
okay.
I can definitely sympathize with that. One of the things that takes me right out of the creative element is having to page through a million presets. I just I over the years have developed a technique. I'm getting a little bit more out of the box and becoming more reliant on outboard gear and pedals for the same kind of reason as what you just found, which is I like to find something that maybe is somewhat in the range from a sound from one of my keyboards, and then adapt it from there with tools that I'm familiar with that are easy for me to use. You know, I know exactly how I can mold it, rather than kind of going through several hundred sometimes, you know, presets to find exactly that bass sound. So I can definitely sympathize with you there.
Yeah, I think that people have a kind of romantic vision of songwriting and recording that may be applicable for some folks. I'm sure it is, where you sit down and things come to you and you just sit at the piano and you write something and it's beautiful. For me, it is much more labored. I don't resent the labor. I enjoy the labor. It's all part of trying to reach the conclusion I'm looking for, but it's definitely technical, thoughtful, very methodical, and I'm guessing that's true for all of you as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Do you keep a notebook by your workstation, so when you find a sound that maybe it wasn't quite right for this song, but darn it, you're going to use it on something else? Because I highly recommend that.
I do. Actually, I wish I kept a notebook, but what I keep is massive numbers of tiny little pieces of paper.
Sticky notes.
Looks like my desk at work.
You know, so it's just awful. But yes, I definitely do, because you don't want to have to go through them all again.
Yeah. Something that I do is I record a quick demo. I just open up a session, and if I find a sound that I like, I just do a quick track in that, so that when I come back to it, consequently, I have like 1,000,003 starter files on my hard drive. So, you know,
that's smart, though.
There's good and there's bad, but that way, if I have an idea, I can kind of go back to around that date and go, oh, okay, what was this? And actually hear the sound again and hopefully get inspiration from that.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
And still without an official release, Kim Rueger.
I know. Yeah, you don't want to see my hard drive full of undone songs. It's an embarrassment, but all fun, all good.
You know, Valerie, I'm going to hold you to that.
I know.
Case actually asked me to ask you a question about, and this kind of gets into the variety of the musical situations that you have applied your voice and your playing to over the years. But Case had mentioned that your music would fit very well in a musical. And has that something like that ever appealed to you? You know, to write something like a musical or music drama, or something that has a little bit of story behind it.
So no, and I'm laughing because I'm known for hating musicals. I do make exceptions. You know, Rocky Horror would be an exception. There's a few exceptions to that, but they're not so much my thing. But I will say that on the new album, the title track, as I was writing it and beginning to hear it, I envisioned it as being the theme song for a James Bond movie. Oh. So if you know what the themes to James Bond movies sound like, that'll maybe give you a little bit of a feel. So.
I think one of the things we started down this road a little bit earlier, but one of the things that I wondered is, you know, you talked about your involvement with being an editor for a literary magazine and being a published author, poet. How does that connect with your songwriting? Do you feel that there's a connection there, or an influence one way or another, either with your works in that arena or with working with other authors and poets in that arena?
So interestingly, my poetry is nothing like my song lyrics, which is nothing like my fiction. I think my song lyrics make kind of insipid poetry, partly because they rhyme, and I don't like rhyming poetry. But, you know, that said, I am very drawn towards written language. I would say I'm more of a lyricist than a composer. And I use, to some degree, the musical environment to tell stories and express emotions, but it's all about the words. When I listen to music, I'm usually listening for lyrics. Now, that said, I listen to quite a lot of instrumentals, so it's not, and people speak with a musical language as well. But I definitely am word oriented.
Definitely. You can hear that in your songs. I mean, not only do you have a unique voice, but the lyrics definitely complement that, at least to me. It does.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Why do you tend towards, you said you tend towards more of the rhyming, but you don't like it in poetry. Are you looking into changing that up at all in the future and doing less rhyming in your lyrics just to see what that does for you? Or do you want to keep with the rhyming? I know there's a lot of people that have a very hard stance. They want their rhyming or at least pseudo-rhyming in their lyrics. And then there are some of us that go, oh, throw it all out. Doesn't matter.
I think it just comes naturally for me. So there are some songs I've written that don't rhyme. It probably depends a little bit on the music, whether it is conducive to having, ends of lines coming together in that way or not. I don't think about it. So I don't actually sit around looking for a rhyme. Lyrics come to me that way or they don't. And then I roll with it.
I think that might be the best advice ever is don't think about it.
Yeah, no, if you think about it, you're going to write really stupid rhymes.
Yes,
and I have a few of those. So, every once in a while there will be a spot where I have selected 3 possible words to fit in a spot. And I can always tell when I listen back, I will say, you know what, that's one of those cases where I forced a rhyme. But most of the time, it just arrives that way.
Well, one of the things Sarah and I have spoken about, and this is really me, not as so much a lyricist because my music doesn't have any lyrics to it, but Sarah had said to me, well, you know what? I think that any kind of verse can go well to music if the songwriter is melodically adventurous enough. And I think that's true. And I see that in Sarah's work, definitely. But I imagine, Valerie, I see that in some of your words too, especially like the line of life where you have a lot of ups and downs with the way that the music is going, but in the rhythm, the melodic rhythm of the lyrics as well. So I think you guys, do connect that way without even maybe realizing you're using a similar ideal behind it maybe.
Yeah, I don't know if this is exactly what you're saying, but something that I think about when I'm writing, I don't think about the rhyming, but I do think about the shape of a piece of music. And I think about the shape of it both with regards to the lyrics. So again, I want to tell a story. I want a left turn at the bridge if possible. I'm also thinking about instrumental density in the song, creating some shape, volume. And then I think some of the things I've learned from Kim's help with my Almost Over album is that you can also vary things like texture and instrumentation and effects. And I love things that give me more options for shape. And I think that comes very much from the literary world as well. You read a novel and you have a sense of the shape of the novel. And I've kind of come back and applied that. And if now I listen to music with those ears and I hear the shape in a way that I probably didn't always, and it came to me more from the literary background than it did from the musical background.
That's interesting. I like that tie.
Valerie, you mentioned Hilliot Fields,
yes,
whose music I love. I'm a great fan of his music. He's very, very intelligent and very, very clever.
He's also a really nice guy.
Yeah,
True.
I've enjoyed my interaction with him over the past 3 years on Twitter. He actually did a remix of your 2014 single "Beaches." He did a few of them? How did you end up hooking up with him in a working relationship?
Yeah, so Nikki from Everything in the Kitchen Sink, she retweeted one of his songs at one point, and that really turned me on to his music, and it was absolutely gorgeous. And so we started to chat a little bit. I recorded Beaches as one of the first recordings when I was beginning to really work with GarageBand and return to the idea of recording. I between 2007 and about 2010, I was ill a great deal of the time. I had 5 surgeries in 5 years, and I wasn't really able to sing. And so with the resurgence of my voice, I wanted to try recording again. I had a real sense of my own mortality, a real sense of the limited lifespan of my voice. And in fact, that was kind of the joke that inspired the name of Almost Over, because my joke was that my career is almost over. and here's my first album. So Beaches was a song that I wrote in 1986. Very specific memories inspired it. And I'd always liked the spare quality of the song, and I tried to re-record it. I'm probably going to record it again because I keep thinking of different ways to approach that song. But in any event, I recorded it, and Hilliot Fields listened to it and really liked it, and he offered to remix it. And at that point, I really hadn't had a lot of experience with anybody remixing my music, but I sort of nervously said, go ahead. And then he just took it in amazing directions that I had not imagined. And I was just thrilled with the very fascinating sounds that he came up with. So I thought I would package that together into a little EP.
Fantastic. Well, we're winding down our time here on Eclectrocast. Valerie, is there anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't touched upon? We're going to ride out on your track Stone, but I want to give you a chance to, say whatever you'd like before we get there.
Sure. First, I guess I'd like to acknowledge some of the collaborators I've worked with across the world. I think one of the most exciting things about working in electronic music is that you can collaborate with people that are thousands of miles away. And so in addition to Hilliot Fields, who I've worked with on those remixes, I worked with the late, great Luke Clark, was an amazing guitar player. Dr. Existenz, who has taken my voice and turned it into a very interesting instrument. Ed Richardson, and then Hilliot Fields and Peter Klein and I have recorded 3 songs as If This, and I'm hoping we're gonna do some more. And then finally, for my last album, I commissioned a remix of Line of Life by Amagma, and that remix really helped me gain listeners. And then Robin Johnston, who is this fantastic Scottish videographer, created this beautiful video for the song, which won an award in the Australian Independent Music Video Awards, and that was pretty exciting.
That's great.
It's a beautiful video. It really is.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's his.
You know what, Valerie? I don't think I've seen that. Where is that?
That's on YouTube.
Where can I find that?
Yeah, if you
Is
look
it on
for
YouTube?
Huge
I'm
Shark
gonna
on
have to check
YouTube, you
that
can
out.
find it. Actually, if you look for Huge Shark, you will find that video and a lot of shark videos.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But yes, I have a YouTube account, and you'll probably also be able to see. This might be on Vimeo, but I also did a soundtrack for a friend's video. Then also on the last album, I hired Amagma to instrument one of my songs just out of curiosity, because I thought they might have a different approach to it than I did. And that song is The Mirror, and they really took it in a very, very different direction than my original direction. So I thought that was kind of fun. It's not something that I think I would do on a Huge Shark album in the future. I think I'll probably instrument my own albums, but I do expect to continue to collaborate with folks.
Great. Fantastic. Sarah, anything else that you're wondering that you'd like to ask?
Just with your more recent venturing into producing your own stuff, is there anything that you can tell somebody that wants to get started into doing their own? Maybe they've just been collaborating or just doing lyrics. What can you tell somebody that wants to make that next leap?
Well, I actually was asked to do that for a friend, Liz Crippen, who just came out with her first EP. She said, well, how do you get started? What do you use? And I sort of helped to walk her through the basics of, a microphone and how your microphone talks to your computer. I told her about some of the equipment that I have and just what I've learned thus far. But I think the biggest thing was to just get your feet wet, because I found it overwhelming at first. There are so many things that you can do. If you go in to edit your track, you'll see all these controls that you don't understand and you're not sure what they do. And at first, even changing them doesn't make it clear what they do. And I've got a long way to go, but I think that taking the first step and just getting a track down and then starting to play with it, it's easier than people think. And I really encourage people to start, because I started out horrified and overwhelmed, and I ended up kind of fascinated and addictive. And now I think that, I'm going to spend a lot more time trying to learn more about my equipment. And so it's been a very exciting road, and one that that I certainly encourage other people to follow.
Yeah, fantastic. Kim, any others? Anything else?
The only other question that I had on my list was really, you have so much going on in your life. You're an IT professional. You are doing your work with the literary journal. You have all these things going on in your life. It would be really easy to not have music in the same way in your life as it is now and still feel fulfilled and have a wonderful life. What brings you back? What keeps you going back to music?
So of all the arts that I pursue, music is the one that is closest to my intimate self, my sense of self. I don't keep a diary. As I mentioned, my music is really my diary. It's my track. It's my breadcrumbs through my life. It helps me remember how I felt and thought at different points in time. It's true that my health has forced me to take a lot of breaks from it, but I always come back, and I think that I would feel emotionally mute if I did not come back to it.
I think all of us feel that way,
Yeah,
too.
that's well said.
In a lot of ways. All of us have careers outside
Right.
of music, which we need to do to support our families and whatever else. But this is so important to all of us, And all of you make music that's important to me too. So, and I think that it's really great that we know each other in this capacity and we can talk about it.
Yeah, I am really grateful for the community of musicians on Twitter. I have never experienced anything like this before. Locally, I don't have very many musician friends, and so it's been fantastic to realize that other people have the same experiences and feel the same things. It's just amazing.
Agreed.
Not to
definitely.
mention
is.
all the help
It really
that
is.
I've gotten. And I really I should stop and credit Kim, because Kim helped me so much with the mixes for Almost Over, and I learned so much from her. And I realize I have a lot more to learn, but that made that album possible.
And
So, thank
it
you.
was a pleasure for me to work with you on that and talking to you about it. It was a fun time, and it was really interesting to get your perspective on your process and your flow and how you went through all of that, and taking, and that was the first thing that struck me, was just how emotional and how you connected immediately with the songs, and then to work with you on how maybe to bring that out a little bit more in the production was a pleasure for me. So thank you for asking.
Well, thank you.
Great. Well, this love fest is coming to an
There
end,
you
my
go.
friends. But thank you, Valerie, for spending the time with us here on Eclectrocasts. Again, Case is sorry he couldn't make it, but I'm very, very happy to have had you and had a chance to talk to you. I'm very happy to have had our guest host, Sarah Schonert, whose music I adore, and it makes me weep. And it's an honor to do this with you too, Sarah, and Kim, who's been one of our Eclectrocast partners and friends for a number of years. So very, very good. I'm very happy to have done it. So thank you all.
Wow, thank you guys so much.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we're very happy. We're going to ride out on one of the Huge Shark tracks from the EP Almost Over. You can get that on Bandcamp and a host of other outlets. And this is called Stone. And thank you for listening, everybody. Take care.
It is winter in these trees. It is summer in this breeze. It is all that I can bear. Every season you're not there. But the spring, it comes so sweet. when I'm a window on the darkest street. You'll always be my stone. When I'm